Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Center of Destiny podcast. Today we have an incredibly special guest, a dear dragon sister of mine. Her name is Z, also known as XiangMing. She is the founder of the Earthstar Academy and the Womb Temple. And for many years, she's been helping thousands of humans return to their true essence, remember their greater purpose and mission in their life. And ultimately, she is here to restore God's love in the heart of humanity. We are so grateful and excited to have you today on the podcast, Z. Thank you so much for being here. And I have a sense we have a really, really deep and rich episode coming through today.
Thank you so much for inviting me and having me here, my dear sister. I am so excited. I know that just in the recent conversations that we've had, we just journey so far and so deep when our field comes together. And so I'm just excited to see what comes through. I know it's going to be so deeply nourishing for us.
Me too, love. And so, for listeners, to give you a little bit of context, Z and I are both really here on this planet, upholding, preserving, activating the remembrance of similar, values of this human journey, similar values that we're really here to protect and preserve on the planet in our own fun ways, in our own unique expressions. But ultimately, there is these currents of energy that Z and I are really devoted to speaking about. And so that's what we're going to be journeying through today. And so we could call some of these codes of being, dragon medicine, dragon lineage wisdom. And ultimately, there is a conversation brewing here today around what it means to return to the true essence of divine union, the holy marriage of the Divine Mother and the Divine Father here on the planet, and how that ultimately impacts the children that are coming in on the planet at this time, and that will continue to be ushered in this world, here to build, here to awaken and help us all remember what is really possible here in this heaven on earth that we're all here to cultivate. And some of these topics are really about family legacy, about the ancestral healing journey that all of us are on, how to really be the new ancestors of our lineages while preserving the wisdom of our ancient memory, and to empower these new earth families with intergenerational wealth so that we can ultimately have the ability, the resources, and the power to create a regenerative planet and world that restores a greater sense of harmony, innocence, and purity back to humanity. So that's the conversation we're having here today. And Z is so skilled, masterful, and embodied in her own experience around this way of being because she's fully living it. Z is in her divine union. She is married. She has two really incredibly special children of her own. And she is also a steward of these two projects and temples, the Earthstar Academy and the Womb Temple. And so today we're going to be asking you about what that experience is like, and hopefully inspiring those of us listening who want to receive from these values and ways of being. So when we talk about, let's start with your personal life, Z. So as a wife and a mother on the divine union journey, really, and really learning how to parent consciously and creating the safe space for your children to really prosper in this world and in this lifetime, can you tell us a little about how you came to be a wife, how you came to be a mother? How did you come into your own family legacy, and what was that journey like?
This is already my favorite podcast that I've ever done because this is the first time somebody has asked me that specific question. Obviously, this is the most important and my favorite part of my life. And so I'm just so happy that I get to share about it. So I I like to say that I was arranged married because the universe was just so clear with the way that my husband and I came together. But actually, throughout our youth, both my husband and me knew deeply inside of our heart and soul that we had a divine union and that we were here to create a very special family. So decades before we ever met, um, I knew inside of my body that I was here to co-create with my divine union partner. And that deep knowing has actually led me through a lot of, let's say, like false union relationships, because that desire in my heart was so present, and even led me to then denouncing the whole desire because those false relationships were so difficult. And, similarly, my husband went through a very similar thing. He read the Da Vinci Code, I think when he was in seventh grade, and he learned that Jesus had a wife. And ever since then, he's just been looking for his wife. Because there is this divine union blueprint that we've never really talked about or even heard about in common religion and spirituality, without, and except in like the new age kind of twin flame stuff. But that was like this dumpster fire trend that got so many people hooked into it, and then just like did not have the true meat, essence, Christed teachings, the depth of the true divine union guidance within that. It was still based in so much of this kind of spiritual and emotional immaturity that our modern people operate from inside of. And so many people has been burned from that twin flame experience. And so when Shane and I first met, I was like so deep in my inner union journey, coming into reverence and obedience to my divine purpose and deeply listening to God and really discerning throughout my life, what is truly this pure divine essence and what was kind of like the noise in the spiritual community. And when my husband and I kind of collided into each other, it was really, extraordinary. I mean, I want to say it was love at first sight in the way that, we got on the phone. I was doing a session for him and we just talked for like 4 hours. And it was like the first time where all of these very specific, strange things inside of our own soul and our own consciousness was being like completely mirrored and met and even completed in another person. And we were on the phone like every single day after that, because when we talked, we felt like we were on mushrooms, and it wasn't just like this activation. It was grounded in our life's plan. I had already been following my own heart and my own path, and I developed a really clear idea of who I'm here to be in this life. I developed a very clear roadmap of my own soul's prophecy and what God had planned for me. And so I had kind of like a 20, 30, 50-year plan, but not like my plan, but just like deeply receiving what my soul is here to do. And he had been doing the same thing. And so when we came together, we're like, holy crap, we have literally the same 50-year plan. Like, how does that even happen? Besides the possibility that we were literally created together to have that shared prophecy together. And it was so extraordinary that it even felt like I had a treasure map and he had a treasure map. But when we put our treasure maps together, it was like this third map emerged, and we just both were completing, because you can't experience and learn everything on your own. So we were really these two agents that got tasked with our own unique learnings and experiences that then just combined in this outrageous way that only God could design and orchestrate. And one of the things that really brought us together was that both of us really deeply desired to be a home for these new earth children. We both knew that we wanted to have children. When I met Shane, I knew that he was husband material because he was so devoted to God, and he knew that he was here to live out his purpose. And he was really like, this fire in his heart was online. And beyond that, he was like, I lived this really challenging childhood and I just want to be a good dad. I mean, how could you not melt when you meet a man that says that like one of their key goals in life is to be a good dad? And so, we didn't realize that God's plan was for us to immediately become pregnant with our first baby 3 weeks after we met. But my children, I'm very psychic and telepathically connected with these new earth children, these very special souls that are coming at this time. And when our children were incarnating, it just really honestly triggered me into such a deep process because I feel that there is this force that is out to get the innocence of humans, right? And I understand that this is because when humans are severed from our innocence, we're also severed from God. And when humans are severed from God, we're lost, we're confused, we don't know what we're doing, and chaos ensues because there is no law, there is no coherence, there is no divine will that can move through our bodies. If everybody is in their own will, we have absolute chaos, right? And so through healing my own inner child and the kind of environment that I wish I got to grow up in as a spiritual awakened being, it just made everything really serious because I help people heal every single day from, abuse and soul fragmentation and not knowing who they are, not knowing what their purpose is. And the result that resulted from people growing up through childhoods that were not only not conducive for their souls landing in their bodies, but actually the society is designed to fracture people's souls and to keep their souls from coming into the body in as many ways as they possibly could have, right? And so having all of that context, um, I developed this immensely deep psychic relationship with my first child, my daughter, Kara. And I really just started deeply listening to her. Like, what does she need from me? What does she want? How does she want to grow up? And, what is so sacred inside of her that is worthy of me doing everything that I could possibly do to be a safe harbor for that spark? And, it's really been this journey of deeply listening. And it's required for us to make dramatic decisions like moving to a different country and, creating financial abundance in like not traditional ways, not like working a job in an office, let's say, and being able to operate um, out in the mountains to create, safe spaces for these children to grow up. And so, yeah, I now have two children. One is 3 and one is 1. And they're just really, really special. And I feel like I'm only in the beginning of really discovering just how special they are. They are special needs in this very unique way. That they just have extraordinary spiritual gifts, and they are coming from the heart of God to bring this such pure and original consciousness that really require for us to get into a deep place of stillness to even be able to perceive. And I think this is a really big message that I have, is that these children really are wanting to incarnate into the earth at this time. And they're looking for conscious parents who are willing to go the extra mile, to ask the hard questions, to do this deep inner healing so that they could be supported, so that their souls could not be fractured at all, so that they could come fully intact into the body from the heart of God and be this leader in and guiding us into this new world, this heaven on earth that is prophecy.
That is such a beautiful story. And I think it's those of us who are experiencing these new templates of relationship, new templates of family that are it's so important to share, these personal stories, because essentially, like you said, a lot of, us on this planet have come from lineages that were holding onto a lot of trauma, soul fragmentation. A lot of us came into this incarnation with, the intention to forget, to ultimately remember. And a lot of us have a lot of transmutation that we're doing through our bodies, reconciling with a lot of the patterns that our ancestors experienced that are no longer fit or no longer in service to our future children or the type of life that we want to be able to give them, or the new narrative that we're telling, through these new ancestors that we are. While also, of course, remembering and restoring, the beauty, the gifts, the resilience, the wisdom, and the magic that's also in our ancestry. And so it's so important that those of us who are coming into parenting at this time, or preparing for union, preparing to be parents, are doing this inner work to really clear the path so that these children don't have to. Because imagine a world where our children don't have to spend 20 to 40 years of their life simply doing the shadow work or the ancestral healing. They come into this world with a clear template and with parents who really know how to encourage them to be themselves and to actualize the magic and the divine encodement that each of us come to this planet with anyways. So I think, it's people like you telling your story about how you came into union, the destiny of that, and ultimately making a choice with your partner to feed the field of this third entity, which is the legacy, which is the family unit, and to ultimately, be a template for others to do the same. So it's incredibly important work. And just to circle back to a little bit in the beginning of your story, let's talk a little bit about the false templates of union. I think another way to, express that is maybe even just like the karmic relationships that are here to catalyze us, to teach us, to ultimately shine a mirror on where we need to learn how to love ourselves, where we can grow more into love, discover our discernment for what is really ours and what is not, and how to ultimately, know the difference between that type of relationship and the divine union. Because a lot of us have had experiences like that. We think the person that we're dating, or we think the person that we're super into or charged by, we try to make it that union when sometimes it simply doesn't have the grounded maturity, the tools, or the reciprocal choice of two people to say, like, we're choosing this. We're going to actually feed the field of divine union here, because divine union is a choice after all. And it's daily, it's a devotion, and it's not just necessarily handed to you. Fate brings people together, but destiny is cultivated. It's something that's built, and it's something that's resilient through challenges. So yeah. What was your experience of that difference in your own life? Like, how would you tell listeners the difference between some of those false unions that you experienced and the difference between that and the type of union that you have with Shane?
It's a great question. And it's really multifaceted. With these conversations, it's always so complex because we have just a lot going on in the world, you know? But the primary thing I feel is that, in our society, spiritual and emotional immaturity is been made a weapon. They want to keep humans as immature as possible. So we're not sovereign. We don't know what our purpose is. We're disconnected from God. And when we're in that state of being, it's impossible for us to actually rise up and create a world within which we're not generationally imprisoned inside the false matrix, right? And so there's been this very aggressive attempt to keep people immature for as long as possible. And this is how we see people in their 40s, 50s, 60s. Our elders are no longer, gaining their wisdom. People are scared of aging. People don't want to rise into eldership because they've not truly matured out of the maiden and boyhood, because our rite of passage has been taken away. And all of this has been very intentional. And so I feel like for me, what no adult ever told me was that in order for me to align to my divine union timeline, I have to live in alignment with God and God's plan for me. And I have to learn how to live in alignment and live in reverence and live in love with God. And so much of our world today, especially even in the new age and the spiritual community, it's like this new age Luciferianism. I read this amazing quote in a book recently called, I think it's called like Heaven Invades Your Finances or something. And on the fourth page, the guy says, kingdom without the king is witchcraft. And I mean, I don't really fully agree with all the things in modern Christianity. And I think that the word witch is kind of derogatory. But what they were really trying to say is that so much of modern spirituality is taken from these ancient wisdom traditions, and they've stripped it of the most core essential part of it, which is our individual relationship with the divine, with Tao, with God, whatever word you want to use, right? We want to have all the things. We want to manifest all the things. We want the world to serve us, but we're living in this inversion. And so essentially when I was looking for the partner, I was like, okay, like I want this, and I want, to experience love, and I want to experience companionship, and I want. And it was only when I actually fully relinquished and said to God, you know what? I don't want anything. I just want what you plan for me, because I trust that my God is an eternal, benevolent God. And what God wants for me is actually my heaven on earth, which is kind of revolutionary when it comes to like the religious programming and the wounding around God and everything like that. But when I actually realized that my most important task, hi, Kara, that my most important task is to actually cultivate inner union with God and to listen even when it's hard, you know, because sometimes God says you got to do your push-ups, you got to, you know, detox your body, you got to fast, you got to do these things that are hard that I don't want to do. But it's like that's the maiden energy right there, right? It's like I want success, I want money, but I don't want the initiation. I want to call myself an oracle and a priestess, and I want spiritual leadership, but I don't want what comes with that. And so, you know, when I just deeply surrendered my will and was like, okay, I'm going to let God forge me into the person that God has put me here to become, and just surrendered, you know, what I was wanting. God started delivering me what I wanted, just like on steroids, like 80,000 times better than I could even possibly imagine myself. Right. And, you know, that was really just the process of how that unfolded.
Oh my gosh, love. So incredibly important, so beautiful and potent. And you started this answer about the emotional immaturity that this sort of matrix wants to keep feeding for us, because it ultimately keeps us away from our own power and the remembrance of our divinity and the way that stewards would walk upon this planet, which is a responsibility, which is, you know, um, I would say like the way of a true queen or the way of a true king. And I think in its more immature state, we see kingdom or queendom as an ability to like rule over. And I think the huge difference between kingdom and queendom in its more divine sense, which is who the beautiful parents of today are rising into, it's not to rule over it, but it's to rule because, like, to step into our kingdom and our queendom is to accept a maturity, a responsibility, a dignity, and a sense of leadership that is far greater in service to anything, far in greater service than to just us. And, you know, it's interesting from a more like somatic sort of perspective on how we come into union or how we date, how we, you know, in a room of people, like what part of us is picking the person that we're attracted to, even talking about chemistry and attraction, because so many of us are holding trauma in our nervous systems. So many of us have unintegrated or, you know, false compasses around what we think love is because of what we saw in movies or what we saw in society, or even sometimes the examples that we had in our own family dynamic. A lot of us find that attraction or chemistry or, you know, the love hormones that we feel and that get activated when we're into someone. A lot of the time, what we're charged by is lust. What we're charged by is chaos. What we're charged by is friction, drama, the inability to know if someone's going to choose you or not knowing how the story ends. And sometimes this like friction and the drama and that push and pull that a lot of us experience in love, a lot of the ways that we push love away, a lot of the times where we're grasping for love, it's really because we're dating from our sympathetic nervous system, our sense of activation. Whereas I feel the type of nervous systems that are coming together at this time, meaning we've done the work, we're clearing some of our ancestral inheritance, we're restoring a sense of equilibrium in our bodies rather than being charged and activated by our trauma, and choosing partners who trigger that trauma to keep playing out those same narratives. What we're doing is actually reorienting to how we choose our partners and how we want to feel in partnership. Is it really friction and chaos that creates a home for children? I would probably say not. Whereas a lot of people are still orienting. And I understand this on a personal level, that love is meant to feel safe, that it's meant to be the most trusting, safe, consistent, stable environment possible, and a lot of the times we think that that might be even boring, especially those of us who have a disposition to blend chaos for chemistry. And I think it's really important on a collective level that we keep clearing these trauma and emotional imprints from our bodies so that we can start dating and attracting people from this more secure place, and from a place where the kingdom and the queendom within is in service to the children, is in service to the third entity that two people in true love cultivate. Because what you're saying is that true love or true divine union is ultimately better for the people around you. It's not self-serving. It's not just for the two individuals. It's about the shared vision and the power of the alpha, the omega coming together and creating something that was not able to be created as individuals before. But then what you're saying is, in order to find that union, it's about unifying the alpha and omega within. It's about finding, your mission and living in integrity with God as an individual. And that is actually the thing that aligns you with a partner that you can cultivate that path with.
Wow, you said some really, really deeply profound and beautiful things there. And so just want to fully honor that. And because at the end of the day, it's about like, how would you know who your partner is if you don't know yourself, right? If you don't know what your mission is and what you like and what kind of life you want to live and where you want to go in life, like this is where the incompatibility, starts to happen. Like people think, oh, because we're after like a pretty face, but it's like, what if they have a completely different trajectory in life than you, right? What if they're not going where you're going? And I think that this is the major thing is like, when I met Shane, I realized that he was, God had shared with him the business and the lifestyle and the family and the places that he's going to live. And it was like a complete alignment to where I was wanting to go. And we also realized that our love is what's actually going to help us both individually get there, because, we both had our unique perspectives and our unique gifts. And just the way that, men and women sometimes are naturally dispositioned to perceive the world and experience spirituality in their own unique ways. And, not to say that it was always easy. We did go through our deep shadow work together. Like you said, not knowing what a deeply loving relationship is can be deeply triggering. When a person is actually there for the long run and is there to fully love every single part of you back into union with God, I mean, that is a really intense experience. And it has to be something that you're ready for, which is also why that inner healing piece, it's like sometimes it's easier to live in 40% healed state, because in order to get to that 100%, you're going to have to walk through the things that maybe you don't have tools for. Maybe there's not enough space in our body for that love to carry us there. Maybe we're scared of what's going to come once we do get healed, with the persecution, the visibility and all of that. So there's so many reasons why we want to stay unhealed. And sometimes, it's just a kind of a dangerous game to both avoid our healing and try to get into union, because it's very likely we'll just find somebody else that's also doing that same thing.
Oh, it's so well said. And what it's reminding me of is like in relationships, sometimes when we meet those inevitable challenges, sometimes we think it's like, oh, we're with the wrong person, or it's about getting into a different relationship. And maybe that's true. Maybe you are meant to be with a different person. However, we bring our stuff with us to every relationship. And I think that's the difference between the karmic relationships and the divine unions. Like the divine union, like you're saying, is the container, is the committed relationship for the long run, in which we get to heal our individual selves and the union within the container of the relationship. And so that's devotion. And not every person that we date, not every person that we meet is willing to go those lengths. And that's why I think you and your partner, you and Shane, were so destined for each other, because it's ultimately the greater mission. Like you're saying, the land, the places that you were called to, the blueprints and the maps that come together and actually fill in these pieces, and also the devotion to being parents that have given you that shared vision, which makes it worth, choosing over and over again, which is why I feel for listeners who are wanting to call in divine union, singles aspiring, wanting to really, take this divine union path, because it is a path on this journey. It might not be for everyone, but for those listening and feeling compelled by this conversation, it is a path. And that's why it's so important, even, in the phase of dating, to really see if there is shared vision with the person that you're considering. And are there similar trajectories? And is there a sense of consistency, stability, and safety that really has the type of substance that you could create home with? Because not every person that charges you just, sexually, or not every person that, you really want to make it work with is the person who is choosing to make it work with you. So it's really about, like asking the right questions. It's about being honest and authentic about what we truly want. And the right person is going to want to go deep in that way with you. And you're going to realize that what you were seeking was seeking you, and that your prayers are answered because they're an answered prayer and you're an answered prayer for them. So I would love to talk about the New Earth children. So, I mean, from my perspective,
Just before we go into the children, there's just one last thing I want to share around this divine love part of it, because I just feel like, and I'm just realizing how important it is for us to share our story, because, so oftentimes we just disillusion. Like, I was completely jaded when I finally met my partner, because it's just like, does true love even exist? And sometimes I make posts on social media and people are like, unconditional love doesn't exist in humans. We're fundamentally flawed. And it's just so important for me to, really bring this soothing balm to our heart, to understand that true love is real, that true love does exist, and that the foundational place where that true love lives is actually between us and the eternal, between our soul and God. And so much of this fracture and this wounding is like our original separation from God. Like, the false religion, like traumas have showed us that, like, God is punishing and God is not there for us. Like, if God is real, why did all these horrible things happen to me? And because we've severed from that deepest love that our soul has, it reflects in our relationships, right? And so, 2 months before I met Shane was when my heart got pulled up into heaven. And for the first time, I just felt how deeply God loves me. How, when my soul is in union with the eternal, with God, it's like there's just so much of this presence of a pure love that is truly just peace and unconditional and ever present. And I called that frequency the beloved frequency. And that presence of God's love, when it's present in one person, it is like this field, right? But when it's present in two people and those people come together with that beloved frequency in the center, that is where like the magic happens. And I think this segues into the New Earth children, because this is a blueprint that has been lost for so long. And they're so excited to bring online this original blueprint of like the Holy Family Unit. Okay. The Holy Family Unit, the divine union, is like the most stable architecture for the highest amount of just eternal, true, divine love to be cultivated, for our bodies to just become this vessel that gets filled up with so much love that there is just peace in our lives. And we first have to learn how to be poured into directly from God, and then we can come together and just allow our union to become a container for that love. And we've been so deeply guided by these divine New Earth children to really remind us, and this is the stable field that creates legacy, creates wealth, creates wisdom, creates mystery school that allows this wisdom to be passed down from generation to generation. I really do believe that this is the way that God created us, to create these safe containers. And I think we're in danger when we allow our mind and our human separation. Like, if we allow people that are not fully anchored in their union with God to have ideas about how we should raise our children, we begin to sneak into these realms of New Age Luciferianism. And I think that this is something that, the New Earth children are really feeling strongly about this time on earth.
Mhm. It's so incredibly true, Z, and it's such a important insight because what is this reality other than a legacy of our ancestral lineages? You know, like at the core of this human existence, at the core of incarnation is a child's life born from divine mother, divine father, and their entire world or their self concept or the way that they see the world is influenced by the quality of the relationship with their parents. You know, it's the original attachment system that we develop. And then how we experienced love and safety with our parents ultimately dictates the type of life that we're going to live. And then this is just gets passed on, you know? So this entire journey is an ancestral one. This entire journey is families within a greater human family system. And I think it's really important at this time that, you know, there's an awakening in the family system because I think on a vibrational level, and I know you know this so deeply, on a vibrational level, what is more powerful in terms of, you know, activating a sense of harmony through the planet to really balance light back upon this planet, to illuminate what has been hidden, to, restore innocence and purity back upon this earth, then the vibrational signature of union, you know, primordial yin and yang coming into harmony again. And then also the light families that are being developed at this time. For example, your family being one of them, and so many of these families that are really living consciously. So with these children that are coming in, can we talk a little bit more about what that really means? Because I know from a human design perspective, in 2027, there's going to be a new energy type called the raves. It's these children, and we have not seen this type of energy system on the planet before. So manifestors being some of the oldest energy types, which is you, and then projectors being some of the newest energy types, which is me. And then these raves coming in with their own abilities. And I know I've also heard from people, you know, speaking that only really advanced old children, old souls are incarnating at this time. I don't want to get attached to how true that really is. However, in this, you know, in this reality, like I'm aware more than ever, I meet children that blow my mind. I meet children that remember their past lives, that understand incarnation, that understand the values of what it means to be human. And they just emanate this freely. It's unobstructed, this divine remembrance inside of them. And I know that, you know, as your sister, like you've shared that so many of your teachings came online at a whole new level when your kids came in, almost as if they were telepathically transmitting, you know, these teachings and these remembrances through you because they're so close to creation, unobstructed. So, can you talk about what you know of this time when it comes to the children incarnating at this time and their role on the planet?
Yeah, so I can't speak for all children. What I have been shown is the specific soul group. They have sort of hired me to be their spokesperson, and because I'm a willing participant. You know, I am all about the children. I kind of gave my life to them. It's, you know, my two babies and their soul group. And I don't know how many they are. It could be thousands. It could be more. It doesn't really matter. But what they are wanting to communicate is that they need families that are devoted to this process so that they can incarnate into those families, right? Because yes, there are souls that are choosing to have hardship and difficulty and learning experiences. And that was kind of our generation, right? Of the light workers and whatnot. But, you know, there needs to be families that are, let's say, a little bit insane, a little bit crazy, right? A little bit just so extraordinarily devoted to this flame of purity, this flame of love for God, love for creation, love for the sanctity of life itself, that it creates this field. And this is what allows the vastness of the consciousness of these children to come in. These children are so, so powerful. They are, and you know, so much of this work is happening through their like unique power. So for example, my son, Kalen, he's, you know, his nickname is Kalen Buddha. My daughter just started calling him that. I don't know like where she got that term from, but that's kind of been his nickname. And he's truly a little Buddha. He does not cry. He is just so peaceful. He's got this little Taoist inner smile and he looks like a little monk, right? But when this kid does cry, holy shnikes, it is like this dragon, like cracks in the earth opens up. Everybody in the house stops what they're doing. And we're in a ceremony. We're in a shamanic ancestral healing ceremony. And he is just wailing like a baby does. But through his little body, he's purging so many things that by the time he is done, everybody is just like wide eyed in a state of, I don't even know what. And there's just peace in the house. Like there's just this piercing peace and stillness. It is just extraordinary. And this happens every single time. Like, it's like, yeah, he'll cry if there's a poop or whatever. But like, for the most part, if he's really just crying, it is a clearing shamanically from the earth. And, that's just like one thing that is so apparent. Like, we don't really know what their other gifts are unless we as adults are conscientious and present and able to actually see what they're even coming in. It's a new experience, right? My kids are 3 and 1. So, I mean, I'm sure I'm going to continue to meet extraordinary capacities within them. But one of the things that they've really communicated is that we need to create these sacred families almost as if we did in the ancient tribes, like in the Essenes and in these temples, right? Where, I feel like my son was a Shaolin monk before that, because there's a certain level of purity and precision that comes from living in this way, where it's like, okay, like, I'm awake, but I'm still going to let my kid watch Miley Cyrus music videos when they're 10 years old. Oh, but everybody else is doing it. And that's just normal, right? There's so many ways where this virus is coming in so sneakily and it's like normal. I'm just going to let them eat poison a little bit. Oh, I'm just going to send them to school and allow them to. And it's like, yeah, I know that a lot of families are not able to opt out of those things, but this is why these children are seeking very specific parents that are feeling called to bring these souls into their families. And we're not entitled to have these special children, right? It's like children are assignments from God. They're not the entitled products that adults get to have. There are literal souls that are entrusted into our guardianship, and it requires for us to rise into a level of guardianship to truly be parents. It's not about us. Like, so many times I hear people talking about parenthood like it's still about us. Like, oh, I would love to be a mom, and I feel like I would look so cute in a matching outfit with my kid, and oh, I want the experience, and it's like, that's like the opposite of being a parent. It's so completely not about us that these very specific children are actually asking for us to go beyond what what we even think we're capable of, to step into a higher standard, to step into a level of mastery so that they can land on our shoulders and be on a platform that allows for them to truly lead us into an entirely new world. And one story that Shane sometimes shares with me is when, the people of Israel were in the desert, all the adults that left slavery, they actually weren't the ones that arrived in the promised land. It was their children, because, it's like sometimes it's very difficult when we've lived in slavery for, thousands of years for us to actually get to heaven, right? Because we're just so programmed and we're so aware of how programmed we are, but we give these children a chance to come in and land in their bodies, to exist in the field of accountability. And it's like, God doesn't ask us to be perfect. These children don't need for us to be perfect, but they do want us to be 100% willing. We do have to be 100% willing to go to the hard places, to do the deep healing, to continually allow this miracle medicine of the beloved frequency to wash us clean and reborn us into these more and more kind of divinely embodied beings, so that we can create this field of protection, because we know that there is a force that's out there to get our children, to demolish the family unit. We see it everywhere. And the reason for that is because when we have strong families, we have generational wealth. We have generational wisdom. We have generational sovereignty and power. And if we just had entire tribes of people that were sovereign and wealthy, I mean, who would be looking for the government to control us in any way, right? And so obviously destroying the family unit is a way that makes us continually vulnerable generation after generation. And the fact that people at this point, like humans have been
Mm.
existing in our family, for thousands and thousands of years. For any human being to be born into poverty, it is an abomination. It is a complete assault on human civilization that any human being is being born into addiction, into fracture, into poverty. I mean, we've had so many years to figure it out. And this is just, the attack on the divine human. And so when we understand that the reason why God created us to live in a certain way is for our best interest, not because God wants to make it so hard and then to punish us, but because this is what helps create the most joyful, healthy, happy, expanded, embodied, divine humans. And that is what God wants for us. And that is what God wants for the children. And this is what the children are bringing in. And so one of the things that the children have really inspired us to do is to start this yearly conference called Grail Quest, which is happening in Portugal this year. And essentially, this is a 4-day event where we're going deep into breaking generational curses, building generational wealth, basking in the frequency of the beloved energy so you can remember in your body what it feels like to feel true love and to come into union in true love and to create legacy in this energy. It really is a 4-day energetic transmission, activation, healing ceremony leading up to Mary Magdalene's feast day on July 22nd, when we're going to be going to the Convento de Cristo and doing a ceremony on the earth to share this prayer with the earth and to allow us to fully remember the architecture of the beloved frequency and the sacred family unit architecture.
How would someone know if the Grail Quest in Portugal this year is for them?
I think it's just about feeling into your body. If you want to pray, like if you believe that the divine union is a container for God's love and God's prophecy, if you feel that you are a part of that prophecy, if you feel like you're meant to embody this frequency of divine union, it's for families as well. So, we have a day camp for children aged 5 to 12 during the conference hours because we just really believe that the family unit is this powerful container for deep energy work, on the earth. And so even if you are single, if you are in a union, if you're a family, if you feel like this earth is needing this prayer and you just feel like you want to do something, it really is calling together people that we can pray together to anchor this energy into the earth's grid, because this is how we kind of fight against these forces, is by making this energy available in the collective consciousness of the earth, and also to receive these frequencies so that we can really live in this place of pure love and to help humanity remember that this love is real. It
Mm.
just breaks my heart when I get these comments of people saying, oh, humans, we're just imperfect. Unconditional love doesn't exist. It just absolutely breaks my heart because it is so untrue. And when I look into the eyes of my beloved and my children and feel this peace that now, we've really worked hard to cultivate in our home, because Shane and I both grew up in very, abusive, broken, emotionally unstable families. And when we first came together, we had no idea what a healthy, stable, peaceful family even feels like. And we feel like we've had to just like crawl out of the depth of hell, with fingernails on the on the sand, just to like finally get into this clearing. And our kids have initiated us into that. Our kids were our lighthouse truly through that, that at the end of the day, even when we were triggered, even when we were healing through these hard times, what we always came back to was just that this love is our prophecy. And this love is what was going to get us through everything. And it really just cultivated and brought us, into this place of now being able to share this medicine with the world.
It's so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And for anyone who's interested in that, you will absolutely be able to find more information in the show notes in this podcast. And I think to just kind of bring a beautiful closing to this conversation, I want to speak to those of us who resonate with this conversation, those of us who are devoted to restoring, the fullness of our divinity, the expansive nature of God's love, through our embodiment, through our partnerships, and through our families, I would say that I'm sure I know that you've gone through these initiations. I know I've gone through these initiations. So many of us have gone through the initiation of, being potentially known as like the black sheep, of our lineages or our families, or because essentially everything that we're talking about, it is going against a current. And what you have spoken to, and a lot of, indigenous elders and, indigenous history would say, is that this darkness, right, that you've referred to, this really like contraction that we feel in our collective memory, that we feel as like this sort of overlay of reality that keeps us asleep, keeps us in cycles of addiction, cycles of trauma, inflicting pain on other people, power dynamics that keep people, some people impoverished and some people on the other side of that spectrum. I think this would be referred to as like a parasitic sickness. A lot of indigenous people would call it a parasitic sickness that came into this dimension, came onto the planet to essentially siphon and extract power. And that power comes from pain and suffering. And that power, is fed the more that we are disconnected from our divinity. And without speaking to it on such a high level and just even speaking to it, on a personal level, like as someone who has gone through a lot in this lifetime, it's been a full-time job to excavate the own suffering of my own mind, because in that mind is a colonizer's voice. Inside that mind is a voice of inadequacy, a voice that never feels good enough, that doesn't know what being good enough is, that forgets, the inner queen, or forgets the divine innocent nature that lives inside of me and lives inside of all of us. And when you get so fixated on that type of voice or those parts of yourself, it can take you down a downward spiral. You can really forget a greater mission that you're here for. You can feel isolated and disconnected from other people, which is unnatural. That is unnatural to our human family. And so many of us are hiding or holding on to that suffering. So many of us feel misunderstood. And I think it's because those of us having this conversation, resonating with this conversation, are here to create a world and restore a type of world that we didn't grow up in. And we see the flaws of this world. We see the beauty of this world. We see it all. And we see the ways that we're here to build these new patterns of legacy and love and family and a regenerative earth. But the initiation to actually step into that is to heal from the suffering, really, and to really accept the mission and accept the difference that your soul really is in this world. Like, you got to get kind of comfortable being an innovator. You got to get comfortable swimming upstream when everyone else is going that way. You and your unicorn friends are going this way. And you're like, I know that the world I don't have evidence of a type of world that I sense and remember is possible, but I am here to devote myself to creating it based off of values that I believe, guide us. So let's talk about that black sheep, the being different, that seeing differently. And I'd love just to know, your own experience with that and how you really claimed your difference and your gifts as an oracle, as a priestess, as a channel, as a highly sensitive psychic being, as an Asian Canadian woman, this entire like story of Z. How did you come into the acceptance of her fully to empower her divinity and ultimately step into visionary leadership?
Yeah. What a big question. And thank you so much for bringing this through. And I think I want to start with this reframe. Partially, I think this was kind of easy because I'm a manifester, and, manifestors just do what they want. And when I gave myself permission to just do what I wanted to do without really, and ultimately, not just what I wanted to do, but understanding that I was just following a higher calling. Like, and I'll get into that secondly, but this reframe I want to share is like the black sheep is actually the wayfinder. So when you realize that you're not a black sheep because God wanted to punish you and God wanted you to have a hard time, you are actually different because it's your responsibility. It's your role in your lineage to find that path. Even if your current ancestors, your parents don't see it that way, if you know inside of your heart that you are a pathfinder, you will find the support of your ancient ancestors to live out that destiny for you. And then on the flip side of that then is that if your destiny is to be a pathfinder, that is a divine prophecy that was given to you by God. And so oftentimes we try to do God's mission. We try to uplift humanity. We try to create heaven on earth without God. Okay. And this is the sneakiness of the modern spirituality, is like, what we all have to heal is this God wounding inside of us. If you can't say the word God, if you have to come up with some other word just to feel okay with it, there is a wounding there. And I've had to go through that to, even reclaim this word. And I don't really care what word I use. You can feel that I have this relationship with my Holy Mother and my Holy Father. And ultimately, that is the root medicine of every single issue that we have in our life. Feeling insecure, feeling small, fear of being seen, not wanting to step into our prophecy, because we don't feel the power of Holy Mother and Holy Father lifting up beneath our wings, because we still have fear of them. We don't know that they've got our back. We don't know how much they love us. We don't know how much Holy Mother and Holy Father provides. We think that when we think about provision, right? There's a lot of like, oh, Holy Father provides. He provides me with a car. He provides me with money. But what Holy Father truly provides, which I feel like is the deepest wealth, is that Holy Father provides us with every resource, guidance, initiation, and experience that gives us the initiation, the experience, and the wisdom to truly walk our path. So when we truly allow our godparents back into our life and heal our inner spiritual orphans, right, needing to go and be called onto that big destiny and to figure it all out ourselves, be discerning about everything ourselves, understand how to do it ourselves. I mean, it's insane. I would just feel absolutely crushed if I did not feel the totality of Holy Mother and Holy Father walking, holding my hand. And even that state of inner union required a lot of inner work and healing of the religious traumas, because Christianity doesn't own God, right? God is a relationship that we have to the eternal, that we have within us. And, even though there are distortions inside of Christianity, just like there are in every other lineage right now, there is still such deep, beautiful medicine that exists in the original Christed teachings that sometimes we throw out, with the bathwater out the window. And it really is harmful, because so much of our modern spirituality is based on metaphysical, things that are in the Bible, except we've taken God out of it. And now, we don't even know that we are orphaned while we're trying to walk this big prophecy. And so when we heal our God wounds, we come into these energies of authority, providence, walking the path that God made for you, right? That is the only way that you can truly have confidence in life. That's what I feel. It's like, who cares what people think if you're right with God, right? If you're in right relationship with creation inside of your own body, you're just flowing, you're doing your thing. And so, I think that when you're
Mm.
on this path of being a wayfinder for your tribe, for your lineage, for humanity, you cannot do that job without having your full connection to the force that created you and all of your gifts intact. You just cannot do it on your
Mm.
own. And when you do heal that relationship with God, then, you actually leave the world of pain, as God called it, right? You leave the world of pain because now you are in a field of union with God. And no matter what is happening in the world, you are in this eye of the storm where peace lives in your house. Peace lives in your business, no matter what is happening out there. Like, people can be slandering you. The enemy can be throwing attacks, but all you're going to feel is you're home with God, and you know that whatever God is doing, God's got you. If God needs to create chaos in other people's lives to teach them things, like, you know that everything is in divine right order as long as that relationship is anchored in your own heart and your own life. And so that's what I got to share.
Oh, I feel like you just like took us to church. It was so powerful, love. Thank you so much for sharing that wisdom. And yeah, it's so true because it's like a child that has the presence and the eternal support and love of their parent. It breeds, a household full of confidence and permission to play, to express, to discover. Healthy parents create an environment in which their children can prosper and really discover and make mistakes and still be loved anyways. And that type of healthy family unit, reflects our own inner mechanism. It's like when they're suffering on an individual level, when they're suffering of the mind, there's a forgetfulness. And, say some of us didn't have those resources. We didn't have those needs met by parents. The reparenting journey is to really summon the inner mother or the inner father, the divine masculine, divine feminine inside of yourself, who can hold those wounded inner child pieces and ultimately not have them lead your life anymore, because that's way too much responsibility for a child to have anyways. So it's really about calling forth, the God self in all of us and calling forth the divine feminine, divine father inside of us. And ultimately, when we can do that inside of ourselves, we also know how to be able to offer that to our children and the children of the planet and each other. So this has been incredibly beautiful. Wow. I'm so honored to meet in this dimension and frequency with you, sister. I really feel that this conversation has been held by pillars and architecture of what dragon medicine really is, as we come to find what that is and remember what that is as guardians, of codes, of guardians of scrolls, of guardians of ancient memory, as it's being restored, because there's been such a even colonization, for lack of a better word, even of our dragon ancestors. These depictions of the dragons needing to be slayed, the bad dragon. And I feel like you and we met through our affinity for our dragon ancestors, the dragon codes that we both embody. And I just want to close with an honor and a gratitude and a remembrance of what dragon energy is and how we can resource from that at this time. So I'd just love to close with any words that you'd love to share, that really honor what dragon medicine is at this time.
Yeah. So the true dragon energy to me is the energy of guardianship and elder wisdom keeper, because the dragons was like the most primordial original force that lived on this earth and carried the instruction sets, carried the codes of right relationship. And I really believe that the dragons, brought this wisdom to teach to humanity, and the dragons gave this teachings to these lineages to, again, teach humanity and how to evolve our civilization. So out of immaturity, out of chaos, out of primitive tribal networks, into more complex civilization, into now we're ascending into a planetary civilization. So we're understanding that we are building more and more complex societal structures that ultimately allows for us to embody more and more of our true ascended nature, right? So when we live in huts and we need to hunt for all of our food, there's very little time for us to truly experience an expansion of our creativity. We could not make music and art and architecture in the way that we are able to now. And really, the dragon is like this creational force that teaches humans, as we're evolving into greater and greater levels of spiritual and creator capability and responsibility. So think about medicine, music, even spirituality, tending the earth, the right relationship of how God intended for us to live, which is in a lot of ways, Christianity is a dragon lineage. Taoism is a dragon lineage. A lot of the indigenous tribes are a dragon lineage because it is teaching humanity how to live in right relationship with each other, with our bodies, with the earth, and with God. It's just that those lineages get distorted and those original pure teachings of right relationship become fractured for different agendas that are going on. But ultimately, the ancient primordial dragons are returning through these lineage holders in all of the different lineages. And what we're doing now is bringing back this energy of really right relationship, right? How are we meant to live on earth as we're designed so that we can truly align with divine will and allow heaven on earth to happen? So
I think that completes a very powerful conversation, Z. I'm so honored to walk with you in this lifetime. And thank you so much for sharing the radical expression and transmission of this wisdom that I really feel you've cultivated for a very long time. And as a woman, as a mother, as a wife, as a founder of these two, different bodies of work and communities, it's no small feat. And it takes so much devotion, so much willingness to be the hands of God, to be the voice of God. So I really see that in you, sister, and honor it deeply. And I'm so grateful to have had this conversation here on the podcast. Um, and for anyone who wants to stay connected with Z, you can find all of the resources in the show notes. And her bodies of work are Earthstar Academy and the Womb Temple. Thank you so much, love.
thank you guys. Bye for now.